Boop. Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, December 30th, 2020, and today's daily Bible readings come to us from Psalm 148, Proverbs 9, 1 through 12, and then 2 Peter 3, 8 through 13. And I'm going to look at the text from 2 Peter 3, 8 through 13 because it's very timely. It's talking about the end of time, which was something that early Christians were very interested in. I think you've maybe heard me use the term eschatological before. I have to use it. I'm required to. Went to seminary, union contract. I have to use words like that every so often. But anyway, that has to do with the end of things. And I won't go into what the word means because you probably don't care. Anyway, but it just means the end of things. And early Christians were very interested in that because they understood that, and rightly so, that the work of Christ had brought about to an end to one way of being, and that the final resolution of all that was imminent. And I think we've lost some of that because it's 2020, right? And we're far removed from the events of the cross. But the truth of the matter is that the truth that Peter's talking about here is really no less true for us than it was for him. And, it's a good time to be talking about this because it's the end of 2020, which feels like it was a pretty eschatological year in more ways than one, if you know what the root of that word has to do with. And anyway, and, this is also the time of year where everybody's looking back on the previous year, as apocalyptic as people feel it was, which is another word that we kind of misappropriate and misuse. But everybody's talking about the year that was, which we do anyway this time of year, right? Like the news agencies, they have nothing else to do this week but run like recap videos. And this year is even worse because I'm like, I really don't want to look back at what happened. But it's a good thing, and there's some questions we can ask. Questions that that Peter is bringing up in this text. And probably the biggest question is, and I think the question a lot of us had to ask ourselves and contemplate, and maybe we should be contemplating here at the end of this year, is when everything else is gone, what really matters? And that's, like I said, the question of the year for 2020. We had so many trivial things taken away from us, things that we thought were really, really important, things that we thought were like the end all and be all of our existence, and they were just taken away from us. And then we also had some things that we didn't realize at the time were very, very important to us. Some things that we didn't really pay as much attention to as we should have, and suddenly they were taken away too. And so the question is, when all that's gone, when everything else is gone, what really matters? And so Peter is talking about the passing away of all things here. Now, he's using much more, kind of dramatic language about it. Peter talks about the things of this world that are destined to pass away. Like, the imagery is really like you're throwing stuff into a refiner's fire, right? I don't know if I'm sure yesterday you spent the whole day refining, gold ore, right, to get, smelting ore. A refiner's fire is you take the metal that you want, and it might be mixed with other metals, or it might just be mixed up in rocks, and you put it in a fire, and you get it really, really, really hot, and all the stuff that you want separates away from other stuff that you don't want. Sometimes it gets burned away and, dissolves, like Peter's talking about here, just goes away, and sometimes it just separates completely and the two won't mix again. He's talking about this thing that's going to happen. The work of God is really like this fire. It's going to lay bare the world, the truth of the world, and the truth about us, who we are as people. And he asks this question, which is probably another good question that we should ask in the face of all the events of this past year, is in the face of that knowledge, in the face of that fire, what sort of person ought you to be? Ought we to be? What sort of persons should we be? And his answer is that we should be the kind of people that are leading lives of holiness and godliness. Think of the word godliness as godlikeness. We're living lives in which we are trying to be everything that God wants us to be, calls us to be, created us to be, and less like the kind of selfish people that we have made ourselves out to be. the question then is the world cool with that? Is the world that we live in, such as it is, really cool with that? And apparently not. And Peter would point that out, that apparently not. And for him, that's part of the problem. The end of all things, in the way Peter's talking about, the way the church understood it and has understood it, the end of all things is the creation of a new heaven and a new earth. Basically, you take what you've got, and God's presence shows up and refines it and drives off all the stuff that isn't a part of what he wants it to be, and separates it out, burns it away, and leaves the things that is supposed to be, right? So we end up with this new heaven and a new earth, right? It's a new paradigm, a new set of values. And here's the telling thing, and almost sad and wistful thing, that the earth that we're left with, he says, is a place where righteousness is at home. So what does that say about the world that we live in right now? Looking back into his earlier question of like, what kind of people should we be? What kind of lives should we lead? If the answer in God's eyes is, people who are, looking to live lives of holiness and godliness, and we live in a world that's not okay with that, maybe we should be praying for God to come and really bring about the new heaven and the new earth. So anyway, that's the DBR for today, as eschatological and apocalyptic as it sounds. But we'll be back tomorrow for our New Year's Eve DBR. We'll see you later. Bye.